The top stories tonight in Y News. Independent group OCTA Research supports calls to de-escalate Metro Manila to alert level 2.
DILG Secretary Eduardo Año tells police officers to increase visibility in leisure areas amid spike in visitors.
Military and police units prepare for possible retaliatory attacks from communist rebels following the death of George K. Oris Madlos. The Senate eyes the passage of the 2022 General Appropriations Bill or the proposed 5 trillion national budget by December.
Philippine delegates push for climate justice to developed nations in COP26 summit.
The world hits a grim milestone as the number of COVID-19 deaths reached to over 5 million. Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from Quezon City. Today is Monday, November 1, 2021. I am Herlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. Independent group OCTA Research is supporting calls to downgrade the National Capital Region to Alert Level 2. This after several business groups, including Metro Manila mayors, have expressed their readiness to further ease the restrictions in the region. Aiko Miguel will give us the details live. So Aiko, what is the reason the OCTA Research Group is supporting the easing of restrictions in NCR?
National Capital Region is now at low risk classification along with its 17 local government units. This is why the OCTA research team said the COVID-19 situation in the epicenter, which is the NCR, has improved. OCTA research fellow Professor Guido David further explains they see no reason not to de-escalate the alert level in NCR from 3 to 2.
We don't see a reason at this time. Wala naman tayong nakikitang variant of na threatening sa atin sa ngayon. Ang naririnig natin itong Delta Plus na yung AY402 ata yun, na nasa UK and nasa Russia. Wala pa naman siya dito.
Arlene Professor Guido also said the vaccination rate in NCR among the adult population is nearing 100%. With this, public transportation can also expand to 100% capacity.
Based sa aming pagbasa ng datos ay it's actually safe to reopen our businesses at this time. I-restrict sana yan to mga fully vaccinated na passengers. Pero sa ngayon naman, kung sa Metro Manila ay malapit na tayo, nasa 96% na tayo may first dose. It means na siguro yung adults natin malapit na tayo sa 100% fully vaccinated na adults sa Metro Manila.
Arlene, the current bed utilization rate in NCR is now only 30%, while ICU utilization rate is 39%. Some hospitals are still at 60%, but these are preferred hospitals for COVID-19 patients. The whole country's positivity rate is at 8%, but NCR has reached the World Health Organization's benchmark at 5%.
This is an ideal number recommended by the World Health Organization. So pag less than 5%, ibig sabihin we are testing enough. And it also means na dahil bumaba yung positivity rate natin all the way from 25% nung peak ng surge to 5% now, ibig sabihin hindi factor yung, or hindi malaking factor yung yung kakulangan na sa testing. In fact, we have enough testing right now.
Professor David also said, Harleen, with a continuous decline of COVID-19 cases in the country and wider scope of vaccination rate, situation in the country will be better before the year ends. However, experts are advising the public the country might have another surge if people will be complacent and would choose to gather in confined, crowded, and close contact settings, especially this holiday season. People should still be reminded living with the COVID-19 pandemic. People should still responsibly observe health and safety protocols against COVID-19, vaccinated or not. And that is the latest live. Back to you, Harley.
Thank you. Aiko Miguel reporting live. The Philippine National Police Highway Patrol Group, or PNP-HPG, has been directed to assist with a 30-day pilot study on the gradual increase in passenger capacity in public transport. According to PNP Chief General Guillermo Alyazar, part of the HPG's assistance is to ensure that minimum public health standards are strictly observed by commuters. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has approved the increase in the operational capacity of public utility vehicles and railways from the current 50% to 70% in Metro Manila and the nearby provinces of Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal starting November 4. The PNP chief reminded commuters to continue observing the health protocols to prevent the spread of the virus.
Meanwhile, several parkgoers visit the Quezon City Memorial Circle, especially during the weekends. With this, the Quezon City government identifies and fences off zones within the park. Asher Cadapan Jr. explains why.
The Quezon City government find ways to avoid overcrowding in the Quezon Memorial Circle by maximizing the allowable capacity throughout the park. This as influx of park goers were recently recorded in the tourist attraction, especially on weekends. In a bid to continue enforcing health protocols at the Quezon Memorial Circle while promoting the physical well-being of visitors, zones were identified in the park where more individuals can be encouraged to converge. These include the picnic area and playground, the fitness trail and Planas Garden, the Quezon City Experience or QCX open grounds, the Peace Bell, the Runner Garden and Fern Garden, the Tropical Garden, the Flower Garden, and the Rock Garden. The QMC administration fences off each zones and put signages bearing the capacity limits and the reminders as to minimum health standards. A maximum of 80% capacity will be limited in each of the identified zones in the QMC, while safety officers will be present in each zone to enforce health protocols.
The Quezon Memorial Circle administration will provide adequate personnel to man the entrance exit point to each of these zones. So rest assured na yung papasok mo doon sa zone will be strictly enforced in terms of yung ating maximum restrictions as to numbers.
The LGU will put up washing and sanitation areas in each zone to maintain safety and avoid the spread of COVID-19, especially among children. Food stalls and hawkers will be deployed in various locations across the park to avoid crowding. All workers in the park shall be required to be fully vaccinated. More zones may still be identified within the QMC depending on the volume of park goers and if the capacity restrictions will still allow. The QMC will be open to the public from November 2 to 5 from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. This will be open strictly for exercise purposes only. Further announcements will be made prior to the weekend. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG Secretary Eduardo Año, has ordered the Philippine National Police to deploy more uniformed policemen to all potential spots of convergence, especially during the holiday season. Año stressed that the public must still adhere to the health protocols and comply with the minimum health standards. Earlier, Año admitted there is always the possibility of a COVID-19 spike with the relaxed restrictions, but assured that the PNP and the local government units will enforce the minimum public standards and prevent mass gatherings.
The Philippines recorded 3,117 new cases of the novel coronavirus disease or COVID-19, pushing the nationwide case count to 2,790,491. 375. In its latest bulletin, the Department of Health, or DOH, said that the number of active cases in the country is 43,185. Of these, 72.6% are experiencing mild symptoms, 12.32% are in moderate condition, 7.2% are experiencing severe symptoms, 4.9% are asymptomatic, and 3% are in critical condition. Meanwhile, 5,124 new survivors were logged. This brought the recovery tally to 2,703,914. The death toll, however, climbed to 43,276 after 104 more patients died. Meanwhile, the overall global COVID-19 caseload has topped 246,721,929, while the deaths have surged to 5,425, according to the Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. is the worst hit country with the world's highest number of cases and deaths at 45,970,881 and 745,836 respectively, according to the CSSE. This is followed by India and Brazil. The Philippines joins nearly 200 countries to the United Nations Climate Change Conference of the Parties in Glasgow, Scotland, where the Philippine delegates push for climate justice to developed nations. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. reiterated that the UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, or UNCOP26, in Glasgow, Scotland is the world's last-ditch effort to save the planet. He called on developed nations to fulfill their commitment to accelerate actions to address the climate crisis. The Philippine Foreign Chief stressed those who have greater capacity must be ready to take hard solutions.
Developed countries must fulfill their long-standing commitment to climate financing, technology transfer, and capacity building in the developing world. This is a moral obligation that cannot be avoided.
He also reiterated the call of President Rodrigo Duterte for climate justice. Situated along the typhoon belt in the Pacific, Filipinos are battered by brutal typhoons year after year. Though one of the least responsible, people suffer the most of the crisis.
The greatest injustice here is that those who suffer the most are those the least responsible for this existential crisis.
Finance Secretary and Climate Change Commission Chairman-designate Sonny Dominguez leads the country's delegation at COP26, and Foreign Affairs Secretary Locsin is part of the delegation. Rosa Licos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Manila Water Service advised its millions of customers that water supply in several areas should be back to normal today. Janice Inhente reports why.
Manila completed today the replacement and realignment of the 7-foot diameter water pipeline in Subredad, Cristobal Street at Sampaloc, Manila. According to the water concessionaire, 98% of the project is completed and they will finish today some physical works on the new cross-under pipe. The replacement of the pipe was delayed because they needed to divide the pipe into 3 parts before the realignment.
Overnight po kagabi ay nag-double time po yung aming contractors, nagdagdag na mga additional welders at saka ng mga welding machine, at somehow nakahabol po kami dun sa delay na ina-anticipate namin.
Maynilad ensures that water supply to their customers in Metro Manila, particularly in Parañaque, Pasay, Makati, and Manila, will normalize tonight. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, Maynilad has started flowing water to the new pipe and slowly building up the pressure in the pipe network.
Okay, so far naman po, sa nakikita namin, kung sakali man wala lang sana maging major defects pang ibang makikita. So far, siguro kung magkakaroon man ng delay, mga 3 to 5 hours lang na additional dun sa original schedule na notice namin.
They have also started opening other water lines in parts of Cavite City, Imos, Bacoor, Noveleta, Rosario, and Kawit, Cavite. Maynilad assured that water rations will continue until their service returns to normal. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Taxi and UV Express drivers are also asking the government to provide them fuel subsidy amid the series of oil price hikes. JP Nunez will tell us why.
The net increase of gasoline and diesel has reached almost 20 pesos per liter following the series of increase in petroleum products. Taxi drivers are now asking for a rollback as their fuel expenses results to loss of income.
Para sa akin, sa totoo lang, 50 pesos, minsan wala. Ngayon, ang operator ko nagagalit. Ang sabi, itigil na yung taxi, hanap ka lang ng ibang trabaho. Wala akong makitang ibang trabaho, so nagtiyaga ako sa taxi.
Bernard Brigondo explains that with the current price of diesel, he will need 700 pesos for a day of ride, which most of the time he cannot meet. He asks for fuel subsidy from the government.
Kaya kami mga taxi driver nahihirapan ng sobra. Lalo na ngayon, nagsobrang taas ng gasolina, hindi pa kami kasali sa nabigyan ng ayuda sa gobyerno na libre kaming gas.
Meanwhile, UV Express drivers echoes the same sentiment. Before, they can earn 500 pesos per day. But after the series of oil price hikes, even earning 300 pesos is hard for them to attain.
Kukunti yung pasahero at tumaas yung presyo ng diesel. Kung yung konsumo sa biyahe namin, yung pa rin hindi nagbago. Ang nagbago lang po dyan, yung pasahero, yung kita namin, at saka yung pagtaas ng presyo ng diesel. Kaya malaking kabawasan sa amin, sa kita namin pang-araw-araw.
The Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board said the 1 billion peso fund for fuel subsidy will be exclusive to jeepney drivers. However, taxi and UV Express drivers ask for the same subsidy as they also needed to cushion the impact of oil price hikes. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A motorcycle group is appealing to authorities to be considerate to motorcycle owners whose plates are yet to be released from the Land Transportation Office. Mel Naribuhok will tell us why.
The Land Transportation Office is hoping that Congress will approve their request for an additional 2.5 billion pesos to finance the production of 18 million motorcycle plates by June 2022. According to LTO Chief Edgar Galvante, 10 million license plates will be outsourced. Most of these are for motorcycles registered in 2017 and earlier.
Yung 2017 pababa, hinihingi namin yung pondo para ito, ipagawa na ito sa labas. Kasi yung capacity ng plate making plant natin, hindi kakayanan yung mga kulang-kulang 10 million na plaka na magawa ito ng mabilisan. Kaya itagagawa namin ito sa labas, assuming na makuha namin yung pondo.
That is why Motorcycle Rider Group Kapatiran sa Dalawang Gulong or Kagulong appealed to the government to give consideration to motorists whose license plates are not yet released due to the said backlog.
Hanggat walang hassle sa pagpaparenew ng registro, walang hulihan sa kalsada, maintindihan at maunawaan natin yan.
Meanwhile, Galvante said they have no problems with the releasing of license plates for motorcycles registered from 2018.
Simula 2018, practically kompleto na, no? Kaya ito pinamahagi na sa mga regions for issuance. 2019, nagpapatuloy ang production natin 2019, 2020, 2021.
Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Military and police forces are on heightened alert following the death of a high-ranking NPA official. Dante Amento explains why.
The AFP and PNP expect possible retaliatory attacks from the CPP armed wing or the New People's Army. This after the demise of the most wanted top official and NPA spokesperson George Madlos, also known as Kauris, in an encounter with the authorities in Bukidnon last Saturday. Though in a statement, Maria Malaya, wife of Kauris, also the current spokesperson of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines in northeastern Mindanao region, denied that her husband was killed in a legitimate operation. According to Malaya, her husband was murdered by government forces while going for a medical checkup. The AFP, on the other hand, has challenged this allegation and told the CPP, NPA, NDF to prove their claim.
It is also my responsibility to see to it na all our operations are legitimate. In that case, I'm really confident na magsabi sa inyo that operation conducted against Kaoris is really a legitimate operation.
The AFP added they will continue to conduct military operations against some NPA members led by Kaoris.
We will continue our combat operations, our focused military operations against them. Until such time na they will surrender, we will continue the pressure lahat ng mga combat operations against yung mga naiwan pa doon na kasama ni Kaoris.
The AFP remains optimistic to neutralize the communist terrorist group before the term of President Rodrigo Duterte ends. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Following the transmittal from the lower chamber, the Senate eyes to pass the 2022 national budget by the first week of December. Should the Senate schedule go on unhampered, the budget will await the president's signature just before the holidays. This report will tell us why. Albay 2nd District Representative Joey Salceda is appealing to senators for the swift passage of the 5.024 trillion peso national budget for next year. Salceda, who also sits as the vice chairperson of the House Committee on Appropriations, hopes that senators who are up for election will be able to set aside time away from campaigning to ensure the timely passage of the budget. The General Appropriations Bill, or GAB, was transmitted to the Senate on October 25, 2 days earlier than the House's target date of October 27. This year's transmittal was also earlier compared to last year when the budget was caught in the middle of the House speakership row between former House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano and now House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco. Senate President Vicente Soto III says they will begin the budget deliberations in the plenary once the session resumes on November 8. The Senate is eyeing to pass the budget by the first week of December. Senate Majority Leader Juan Miguel Mig-Zubiri, for his part, assures that he will prioritize the budget in the plenary and try to pass it on time. He vows that the Senate will not allow a reenacted budget. Based on the draft schedule of the Senate Finance Committee, the Senate targets to approve its version of the bill on November 25, while the Bicameral Conference Committee is eyed from November 29 to December 2, and the signing of the budget by leaders of both chambers of Congress is expected on December 17. Once the enrolled bill is signed by the congressional leaders, it will be up for President Duterte's signature. Under the GAB, the House realigned over 65 billion pesos of the 2022 budget to several programs, including the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines and booster shots and the special risk allowance for health workers. Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For the news abroad, the COP26 Climate Change Summit has kicked off in Glasgow, Scotland, Sunday. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson described the summit as the world's moment of truth. Ruth Bahe tells us why live. Good evening, Ruth.
Good evening, Elsie. The previous 25 UN climate change conferences have unfortunately failed to deliver real progress in saving the warming planet, according to experts. Now, this year's United Nations 26th Climate Change Conference of the Parties, or COP26, is in as crucial if climate change is to be brought under control. It aims to accelerate action towards the goals of global emission reduction under the Paris Agreement. The delegates of the COP26 representing 200 countries are there to announce how they will cut fossil fuel emissions by 2030. Scientists urge the leaders to cut 50% of the world's current carbon emissions by 2030 to avoid a looming catastrophic environmental disaster. At the opening of the summit, COP26 President Alok Sharma delivered his speech and called on everyone to step up to pursuing the global temperature goal of 1.5 Celsius.
6 years ago in Paris, we agreed our shared goals. We said we would protect people and nature from the effects of climate change. We said we would get finance flowing to climate action. And we said We would limit the rise in global temperature to well below 2 degrees, pursuing efforts towards 1.5. The rapidly changing climate is sounding an alarm to the world to step up on adaptation, to address loss and damage, and to act now to keep 1.5 alive. And we know that this COP26, is our last best hope to keep 1.5 in reach.
Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has spoken ahead of the summit, urging leaders to make the most of the two-week climate change conference. Day one of the summit will see a report on the state of the climate released by the World Meteorological Organization. Elsie?
Ruth, there are big decisions to be made in that conference. What are the changes that people should expect after the summit, and how is it going to affect us?
Yes, Elsie, there could be a lot of changes. Each of the delegates from 200 countries around the world have devised ways, policies, and plans to reducing carbon emissions on a global scale. And those decisions, once approved, could impact people's jobs, how people travel and heat their homes, and even how people eat. Back to you, Elsie.
Thank you, Ruth Bahe, live from Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. After 18 months with one of the strictest coronavirus border policies, Australia reopens its international border to vaccinated Australians. Marvi Delphine will tell us why live. Yes, Marvi?
Australian Tourism Minister Dan Tehan announced that quarantine-free travel from New Zealand to Australia will now return as part of the initial reopening of international borders. Mr. Tehan further detailed that New Zealand tourists must follow pre-departure measures, which include proof of negative pre-departure PCR test within 3 days of departure, a complete declaration and evidence of full vaccination. Aside from that, fully vaccinated Australians, but only from the capital Canberra, and the states of Victoria and New South Wales are now free to travel internationally without exception requirements or the need to quarantine upon arrival in the country. The relaxation to travel rules comes as Australia switches from a COVID-0 pandemic management strategy to continue living in this time of pandemic through extensive vaccinations. Nearly 77% of the country's population is fully vaccinated, and over 88% received their first dose. Elsie?
Marvi, how come Australia only allows vaccinated Australians from certain states to travel internationally?
Well, Elsie, the travel rules are not uniform across the country due to some states and territories having different vaccination rates and health policies depending on their COVID situation. Here in Western Australia, for example, the state continues to maintain its virus-free status. But the recent changes to the travel rules sets the country's plan in motion to reopen to international tourists and workers. Back to you, Elsie.
Thank you, Marvi Delphine, live from Perth, Australia. Police were extremely disappointed with the actions of around 5,000 people that gathered in the Auckland domain to express their dislike of COVID-19 restrictions and the vaccine rollout. He said that while those in attendance conducted themselves in a calm manner, the gathering was a significant breach of COVID-19 Alert Level 3 requirements. At the time, police said a number of individuals would be prosecuted, and Superintendent Shannon Gray confirmed the first arrest today. A 36-year-old man has been arrested and scheduled to appear in the Auckland District Court tomorrow. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced today that Auckland will move to Step 2 of Level 3 from next Tuesday. Waikato will move to Step 2 from tomorrow, while the rest of the country's alert levels would remain the same. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had tested positive for COVID-19. This was days after pulling out of U.S. President Joe Biden's overseas trip due to a family emergency. Abby Valdez reports why.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said she has contracted COVID-19 and is experiencing mild symptoms. She said it was important to publicly disclose her diagnosis to maintain as much transparency as possible with the American people. She also shared the last time she was in contact with President Joe Biden was on Tuesday, October 26. She and the president sat outside more than 6 feet apart from each other and both wore masks. President Biden tested negative for the virus on Saturday. He tested randomly once every 2 weeks for the virus on advice of his physician. Saki has been vaccinated against COVID-19. She says she will return to work after completing a 10-day quarantine period and a negative COVID-19 test. She was supposed to join the president on a trip to Rome and Glasgow this past week, but decided to opt out of the trip after a member of her household tested positive for COVID-19. She has been quarantined since Wednesday and repeatedly tested negative until this Sunday when her COVID-19 diagnosis was confirmed. So far, Saki is the most high-profile member of the Biden administration to get COVID-19. Abby Valdez, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is now the first COVID shot approved for young children in the United States. Mavian Dog will give us the details live. Yes, Maeve?
Elsie, the decision by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, came after an expert panel of advisors voted to authorize the Pfizer jab for children, stating that the benefits outweigh the risks. Around 28 million American children aged 5 to 11 years old may receive the COVID vaccine, many of whom are back in school for face-to-face learning. The shots, however, will not be available until the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have made recommendations on how the jab should be administered. According to Acting FDA Commissioner Dr. Janet Woodcock, the immune responses in children aged 5 to 11 has shown 90.7% vaccine efficacy.
Vaccine safety was studied in a trial involving about 4,600 children aged 5 through 11, of which 3,100 participants received the vaccine. Importantly, no serious side effects were detected in this trial.
FDA also said that a 10 microgram dose of Pfizer's vaccine will be administered to children, which is lower than the original 30 micrograms for those aged over 12. This could help reduce rare side effects previously found to be associated with the vaccine, such as heart inflammation or myocarditis. According to Dr. Peter Marks, FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research Director, more children reported side effects after the second dose and were generally mild to moderate in severity.
The most commonly reported side effects in the clinical trial participants included injection site pain, redness and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle and or joint pain, chills, fever, swollen lymph nodes, nausea, and decreased appetite.
Furthermore, the pediatric shots will be using a new buffer, allowing them to be stored in vaccine refrigerators for up to 10 weeks. Elsie?
Maeve, is this the only vaccine that will be available for this age group in the U.S.? And what is their vaccination rate looking like?
Elsie, Moderna recently reported interim data that their vaccine showed strong immune response in children aged 6 to 11 years. They are also waiting on U.S. regulatory decision on the authorization of its vaccine for children aged 12 to 17. As of this weekend, Elsie, around 58% of the population is fully vaccinated in the U.S. Back to you, Elsie.
Thank you, Mavian Dog, live from Toowoomba, Australia. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 25. It says, "There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." And those are the reasons behind the news, November 1, 2021. I am Hardin Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. Evangelo Castro III.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
overnight po kagabi ay nag-double time po yung aming contractors, nagdagdag na mga additional welders at saka ng mga welding machine. At somehow nakahabol po kami dun sa delay na ina-anticipate namin.
Dapat parehas. Kung mayroon yung jeep, mayroon din dapat yung UV kasi parehas public yan eh. Ang jeep, may pasahero sila, ganun din kami.
Kaya kami mga taxi driver nahihirapan ng sobra. Lalo na ngayon, nagsobrang taas ng gasolina.
In that case, I'm really confident na mag-servicing that operation conducted no kay against Kauris is really a legitimate operation.